Thank you. Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We are set and ready to roll. No, it's fine. As mentioned before, I am Andrea Knowles, the Executive Director of the Broward Legislative Delegation. Fumbling with my mask and this earring right now. There we go. But we're going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And just as a welcome from our delegation, our chair is State Representative Michael Gottlieb. Our vice chair is State Representative Patricia Williams. And they say hello to everyone that's here and who are attending online. Just a few things as we get started. Want to make sure that I recognize our staff. Can't do it without them. Sydney Wilson, my administrative coordinator, there in the corner, and she deserves that. Thank you. And Louis Reinstein, our delegation counsel, there. Thank you. Thank you. And our workshop facilitators. I think this is moving and I don't want it to. But we have Ms. Yolanda Cass Jackson from Becker Lawyers. She's a shareholder there in the beautiful red. We have Candace Eriks there in the corner with TSE Consultants and TSE Governmental Affairs and Eriks Consultants. And we have Julie Clare, who's with Gorin Sheriff Duty and Ezra, shareholder. And also, because we do it so well with staff, we have Latoya Shields with Becker Lawyers, and we have Lauren Jackson with TSE and Eriks. Thank you. And I do want to take a point of privilege. This young lady who's taken her seat there at the table is 2 days elected. State Representative Lisa Dunkley, District 97. She'll be sworn in November. Thank you, Representative-elect, for being here. Just a little bit about our delegation. As you can see on the slide, we were created by the legislature in 1972, and we're here to be a resource between our community and the local federal government, citizens of Broward County. We do workshops like this. We hold hearings, public meetings. Those things will come up after the November election, so please go on our website to make sure that you know what we have going on, but we coordinate those local activities. We also do the local bills. Any local bills that come out of Broward County have to come through and pass through your Broward Legislative Delegation first. So if there's a municipality, an organization, or an agency, one of the reasons we wanted to do this early is because those agencies need to have their commission meetings held, get them passed through and get an ordinance through the city and then bring that information to us. So this is the time that cities should be looking at any local bills that they may have in mind, because they will need to come through the delegation. And once we get our dates, things are going to move very quickly, hard and fast. So that's just a point of privilege, point of information. So we also monitor the appropriations process, but these lovely ladies here in Lewis, they take care of that in Tallahassee for our county. And we're just so grateful for the work that they do along with our delegation. With local bills, and Lewis is going to get into this, and before we do, I want to see what cities we have represented here today. So from the front row, what cities we have? Town of Pembroke Park, and I know we have any other cities. What cities? Hollywood. Hey, how are you? the mayor, correct? I want to make sure. Okay, and say your name as well. Josh Levy, mayor of City of Hollywood. Thank you, Ms. Horland. How you doing? That's right. For those who can't hear, Bob Mayerson, president of the League of Cities, and he's here representing also City of Parkland. Commissioner Sabrina Hollandale Beach. Thank you. Was it? How are you, Ms. Starkey? Thank you. Thank you. And make sure everyone that's here, make sure we get your info. That way you can make sure you're getting info from us as we push it out from our delegation, especially with November approaching and our dates and things that you may be interested in hearing. What legislative offices do we have represented here? Starting in the front with Senator Osgood's office, Julie. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm here on behalf of Representative Daryl Campbell. My name is Athena Geisis, District 8.
Hey. Yes, sir. Representative Bartleman's office. And your name? Hi, Tom. How are you? Hi.
Representative Felicia Robinson's office, District 102. My name is Condit.
Thank you.
Sean from Senator Lauren Book's office.
Sean from Senator Lauren Book.
I'm representing City of Deerfield Beach.
Hi, that's my hometown. I should have let you go first. That's my hometown, Deerfield. Thank you. What's your name again?
John Savage.
John Salas.
Zoraida Druckman with Senator Lauren Book.
Hey.
Linda Siegel with Chairman Michael Gottlieb, representing Davie Plantation, Sunrun. Okay, so we're 98, Cooper City, Southwest Branches, Pembroke Pines. He's 98, District 98, but we are 102.
Thank you. All legislative offices, including federal.
My name is Debbie Wood. I represent Debbie Watson Schultz, which is Congressional 23. We'll be coming up.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Devon Campbell, Intergovernmental Affairs for the City of Miramar.
Robert Moore, representing Representative Williams' office, formerly 92, soon to be 98.
Yes.
And I'm Connor O'Brien here on behalf of Representative Williams' office as well.
Thank you.
By the way, I'm sorry for interrupting. Representative Gottlieb is watching virtually. He's just caught up with his law practice. He's sorry that he can't be here in person.
Thank you. Hi.
State Representative Dan Bailey's office.
Hi. Okay. Thank you from Rep. Daly's office. Thank you. And those who we did not represent or recognize from an office, please just tell us where you're from. I see Broward Health here. Kathy Salerno. Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy Slater with Bird Health.
Thank you.
Sure. And so, the Early Learning Coalition of Broward County.
Sophia Hall with the Early Learning Coalition of Broward County as well.
Thank you.
Olive Valenzuela, Hispanic Community of Florida.
Thank you.
Nasby Chattery with United Way of Broward County.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Johnson Moon, Red Cross, depending on
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else that we missed? David Seegerson?
David Sigerson, Capitol Hills Consultants, and I represent.
Good afternoon, Mary Todd, Executive Director, Broward Region Cities.
Hey, Mary Lou. I think that's everyone. Okay. Representative-elect Dunkley? Would you want to say anything?
Thank you, everyone. Oh, my purse, I'm sorry. Thank you, everyone, this evening for being here. But I also want to say I'm glad to be here to meet everyone, hoping that after this I can say hello and to everyone that's in the room and to all the people on the table. Glad to be sharing this table today with you all. I'm the newbie around here, right? But I'm okay. I'm just happy to be here just to participate in what's going on and learning because really I'm going to be learning a lot, right? So, well, thank you, everyone. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And Senator Pizzo's office is watching as well. They sent me an email. They will be joining our Broward delegation effectively in November in the new Senate district drawn there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Louis Reinstein is going to start us off with our local bills for the delegation and what the basic requirements are. And for anyone that came in early, you probably gathered one of the documents, but it's also on our website, broward.org/legislative.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Louis Reinstein. I am the Broward Legislative Delegation Counsel. Since we did so many introductions, I want to make sure to give a special thanks to Andrea Knowles, who put everything together. If we can just give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
And if you didn't hear, you can also wish her happy birthday. It was her birthday a couple of days ago, so happy birthday. There you go. Okay, so again, Louis Reinstein as the Broward Legislative Delegation Counsel. I'm going to talk briefly about the local bills process. There's the PowerPoint that you can follow along with. A local bill is any bill related to a specific geographical area and not the whole state, which requires a general bill. For local bills, there are 4 main points. One is that you must have a sponsor from the Broward Legislative Delegation. Two is that it must be submitted in a proper bill form, and that's what we're going to be talking a lot about today, and that's what our wonderful panel will also comment on as well. Three is that the bill still needs a majority vote of each chamber present and voting to move forward. There are 2 public hearings, and it's the second public hearing in which testimony is taken. The fourth one is that only then will a local bill be submitted to Tallahassee and then go through the steps of a committee assignment and so forth. So those are the main steps. There are some other points on the PowerPoint as well. Let's talk about the proper bill form. So in order to have a proper bill form, you need to have a cover letter. Cover letter is important. It's not just the typical hi, my name is. Cover letter needs to have a brief description of the bill. It must have a statement on why this legislation cannot be accomplished at the local level. It must have the name of the delegation member sponsoring the bill. So please don't submit one unless you've already gotten locked up your delegation sponsor. It has to come through a delegation member. And then you have to have the contact information for the agency, the firm, or the organization submitting the bill. That is extremely important. If you do that and you do it early enough, then we can contact you if we need to talk to you about any issues that we may see in the bill before it moves forward. Please also submit a draft of the bill in Word format. I know a lot of times in a lot of offices, you don't submit anything unless it's in PDF format, but we want it in Word format so that it's easy for us to work with. Next major point is that for these local bills that, and again, these are the ones not related to annexation, it needs to have an economic impact statement. That means that it needs to describe the economic impact of this potential legislation, which includes the fiscal year dollar amounts, and that includes the current and the following year that we would like included, please. Not only do we want you to list the name of the delegation member, but it's really important to have a confirmation letter from the bill sponsor. It's good for you, it's good for us, it ensures that all of the I's are dotted, T's are crossed in terms of sponsorship. The last main checkoff point is to submit a full and completed package to the delegation office. That will go to Ms. Knowles. Moving right along, all the most important information is going to come from this panel over here, so I'm just going to run through some of these steps here. So the next main bit of information are the local bills related to annexation. Again, this also requires a cover letter to the delegation office. It requires a brief description of the bill, a statement of why this can't be accomplished at the local level, so why it needs to go up to Tallahassee and come through the delegation, a description of how services will be changed in the annexed area, so provide us some background information so we fully understand the purpose. Again, name of delegation member sponsoring the bill, and then the contact information for the agency, firm, or organization submitting the bill. Same thing, draft of bill in Word format. But for this one related to annexation, we need a certified map and legal description and maps showing surrounding area. That's really important so we see exactly the area at issue for the annexation. Again, an economic impact statement, again, a confirmation letter from the bill sponsor, and please make sure that you've checked off all of those before submitting the completed package to the delegation office. Now, the next area is local bills related to annexation and de-annexation, but these are ones that are strictly pursuant to Chapter 171 of Florida statutes. So there's a difference there. This still requires the cover letter to the delegation office, still the brief description of how the services will change, name of the delegation member, contact information, so that's all the same. This one also requires a petition from the property owner or proof of referendum. So that's the big difference really under Chapter 171 is in regards to the proof of referendum and the petition from the property owner or the petition from the property owner. If there is a petition from the property owner, please include a copy of the petition. If there's if it's gone through this process and there's an ordinance, please provide the ordinance. And then again, certified map and legal description and map showing the surrounding area. Again, the economic impact statement. And then finally, the confirmation letter from the bill sponsor. All of that together will create the full package to submit to the delegation office. So that's the brief outline that I have in terms of what's required, in terms of submitting a local bill and in terms of submitting local bills related to annexation or de-annexation under Chapter 171. Now we have a fantastic panel that was introduced, and I'm going to turn it over to them to jump in and give you the real substance and nuts and bolts, although I think I see our executive director who has something next for us.
There's just one thing that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out with those annexations that are pursuant to Chapter 171 of the Florida statute. There also needs to be, and I guess I forgot to put it there, an employment displacement form to show how this will, if it will, have any negative impact on employees being displaced once the annexation or de-annexation is done.
Yeah, and I'll just add, you know what, it's fair to say that if we left anything out, which it's possible because Chapter 171 is not just what we've listed, please refer to this statute.
Thank you. Also, just want to make note that we have Todd Drosky from the city of Deerfield watching. We also have State Representative Chip Lamarca's office on. And I believe there was one other. Nope, I believe that's all. So now we'll get into the guts of the legislative process that will be coming up soon with session, and we'll begin this discussion, and we have our panel ready. You will have a moment to ask questions to get more info, and then, of course, we can mingle once we adjourn. So I'll start with Candace. Your name was listed first.
How's that? Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is a great crowd, and as we were just talking, we're very excited to have everybody back together and getting ready for Tallahassee, even though it is a little bit early, but I agree with Andrea completely. The earlier, the better. I know that, many of the cities that we work with are here today, and obviously all the delegation members and some clients, but we want to say that obviously communication is the most important key when it comes down to finding out what your organization, your city wants to achieve up in Tallahassee, whether it be appropriations or whether it be local bills. I know that we talked that mainly we're going to be looking at local bills, but I believe through the discussion we were going to talk about general legislation as well, right? Because a lot of this all applies to all of it. So just so you know, the five of us work very seamlessly together. We work with Julie on many things here down in the local area, even though Julie doesn't come up to Tallahassee with us. We miss her, and we would have to bring her probably screaming and kicking, but the rest of us are up in Tallahassee completely all the time. So really, we want to talk a little bit about when it comes down to local bills and just legislation in general. I think it's, like I said, identify this stuff early. I mean, Lauren's going to go into a little bit as what some of the other things that we're going to talk about. But as soon as you can get it, if you guys work with a lobbyist or you work with a representative, that communications has to start now, actually, even though technically for this year, the election doesn't, obviously is in November, but many of the representatives are already here. So what I encourage you is to start to get to know your delegation members. We've lost a few of them. We had 19. I can be wrong here. I keep saying we've gone down to 16, but Lewis, am I correct? Is it 16 or 15? 15 right it's 15. So, I mean, we lost some representation, and we have new members, which is fantastic. So I really encourage getting to know everybody now. Don't wait until session. The representatives and senators and their staff are going to be extremely busy being pulled from other people outside of Broward County. So really getting to know them now while they're home. You don't need, I also, disclosure, chair of Broward Days, I want everybody to come up to Tallahassee. But really, I want you guys to get to know the delegation and the staff here now, because they have not all the time in the world as I look at staff members, but they do have more time here than they are going to be up in Tallahassee. So we have many other panelists here. I'm going to turn it on over, and then I think that we've decided that we're just going to kind of work off of each other, give the information that we have. We all work very diligently for our clients and for this community. So really want it to be a discussion. And also, if you guys have questions while we're doing this, you don't have to wait for us to stop talking. Please just raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and do a back and forth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Yolanda.
Okay. Thank you, and good afternoon. So I wanted to follow up on the communication part because I think that's probably, at this point, the key. And I know staff would appreciate the communication. And that is, within your municipalities, you can start right now talking to your departments to kind of identify what the needs are. A couple of things we do know. We do know that there were dollars for infrastructure. And so anything having to do with infrastructure is a good thing. But you do need to talk to the people in your city to see exactly what you want and whether or not it's feasible and whether or not it's doable. A $10 million project is probably not feasible or doable in Tallahassee. And so each of you probably have your own lobbyist. I know we try to give a range of what's reasonable to ask for in terms of dollars, what's reasonable to ask for in terms of projects, what's reasonable to ask for in terms of a member's strength even. Some members have lots of cities, and so the reality is, you know, they're going to have to pick and choose. So you pick and choose as well. Make sure that you have priorities as to what you would like to have. So if a park is your number one priority, then make sure that that's clear. And know that you probably will not get a $10 million project. Probably not. No matter how good the lobbyists are. So communication key, start out with your department heads, and then you have your own process internally that you have to talk to. The commission has to approve, right? So you want to leave it at as much time as possible for that. And so really you want to have by December at the latest an idea what your priorities are, because you know, I've been doing it a few minutes, so I could tell you that generally the request for member projects generally is due in December. I don't think that's going to change much. Maybe you may get to January, but for those staff people that kind of kill us when we get stuff at the last minute, I would suggest that you start looking now in anticipation of what those dates are like. So communication key, first deadline is probably December for member projects. And let me just kind of venture off a little bit. You don't always have to have a member project. Does everybody know? Everybody knows what a member project is, right? When we put out the little forms, there are other substantive opportunities that may not come through a member project. And what are those? The Broward League of Cities has its priorities. The Florida League of Cities has its priorities. And you can piggyback on those as to make those priorities within your own cities. So I'm going to stop there.
I was just going to add,
Yes.
and Julie, jump in, please. But as we're sitting here talking about that, I mean, also, if you do a local bill, we're going to try and jump a little bit with legislation and local bills. So when you do a local bill, it takes time. And it takes a lot of time. And when we say that, it's because you have to literally educate every single delegation member and their staff, sometimes multiple times. Okay, you can't assume that they're just going to go along with it because it affects your area, because we have lots of years of history of not assuming, but working and making sure that, and even when you educate everybody, all of you know who have been around or been elected and been staff, that even when you get to a delegation meeting, there's still going to be questions, there's still going to be clarification. So doing your homework and not only knowing who your audience is, but understanding your member and the person who's running it and what their passions are, but also every delegation member and how it's going to affect them too. So that's first for the local bills. And then going back to the member projects or appropriations for those of you who are new. So member projects, there's money which a member submits to the House and the Senate, and to be able to get it out of different budget silos. So there are different budget silos for many of you who know this. But what you want to try and do is you don't want to put them all in the transportation silo, right? Because then you're competing against yourself and your sister cities. So what you want to do, if you have 3 projects, then you put them in different silos, so you don't have to have your member also choose. Because what ends up happening is they get called in and they say, give me your top 3 priorities. And if they have 6 cities, they're picking the top 3 priorities. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking, and Julian and Lauren will over.
I just want to give you guys a little bit of, we're going to back up the process just a little bit. Some of the information that Andrea and Louis reviewed that is on the website, it's very key and very important that you follow those forms, you follow the process, because if you don't do it right, they're going to have to kick it back until it's right before it can proceed forward. That eats up time. Time can affect and factor into the success of whatever your issue is. So you always want to make sure that the forms that they have on their website in the manual, the information is very well done. In the event that you don't know or you haven't done a bill in the past, work with your city attorney. If they haven't done one, work with your lobbyists. They have experience and knowledge, but the most important part is that when you actually submit it, that it be done, complete, and accurate. Because if it's not, it can impact how things proceed forward. That's the first thing. The second thing is that once you have something submitted and you have a sponsor and things are moving through the process, people who are working with you, your lobbyists and others, they're there, they're working on your behalf. That doesn't mean that you get to sit back and not do anything. It's very important, as everybody keeps saying, to communicate with those who are sponsoring your bill. That doesn't mean that you hound them every single day. The communication has to be consistent, but as somebody gave me their coin phrase, it's slightly persistent communication. You need to, there was a lot going on, it's a fast-moving process, and you need to continue to keep your issue, your program at the forefront of their mind, because there are priorities and there are different ways in which they're actually ranked and prioritized. The issue is you want to make sure they remember what you're doing and what it's about. And the last point that I'm going to make before I turn it over is you want to make sure that in addition to the entire packet that you put together for the representative who's handling your bill and sponsoring your bill, that you also have a communication sheet, something that they can use, a one-pager, very short, very succinct, very bullet point type thing that they can use to not only educate others, but that they can remember and use to promote what your particular issue might be. Okay, so communication is key, but you want to keep it short and succinct, because if you have a thesis paper, they're never going to read it. They don't have the time. Okay, so you want to make sure that what you are promoting is clear, concise, and chock full of information in a very short package. Very impactful. Lauren?
And I just want to add, in regards to the local bill process too, getting it through the delegation is a feat in itself sometimes, but once it gets up to Tallahassee, it becomes even harder for that bill to move. And local bills are only filed in the House, not the Senate. But even still, the Local Affairs Committee is where a lot of Broward delegation local bills stops and it doesn't move forward. So there's still a lot of work to do when you get up to Tallahassee. If amending a local bill is a lot harder than amending a general bill as well. So for example, a couple sessions ago, there was an amendment filed on a local bill and we had to quickly scramble to get a delegation meeting together because the delegation has to approve. You have to get a majority of the delegation then to approve that amendment in order to amend the bill. And there's notice requirements that go into that. And so there's sunshine requirements. So you really have to factor all of that in your process. So make sure that the bill is as accurate as possible, that your title is as broad as possible, that you don't have to go back in and make any changes. And if you do, just be prepared to have to work twice as hard to get those changes completed. There were a few sessions ago, I remember we couldn't get a quorum in time to make an amendment that was needed on a local bill. So keep all of that in mind as well. And also something to keep in mind, which I'm not sure if you mentioned, but the one senator, even though it goes through the House, one senator can stop a local bill on the local level. So before it gets through the delegation, it only takes one Senate vote to stop the local bill.
And that senator does not have to be from Broward. So, and there's a lot that goes up in Tallahassee, and there's a lot of things that happen that are affecting an issue that has nothing to do with the issue. So I say that because it could be a personality, it could be a member not getting along with another member. I mean, there are a plethora of things that can happen, and that's why your boots on the ground, whoever they are, your representative, they know these things, right? That's what you pay them for, to be up there, is to understand what's going on behind the scenes, politically and other things that are happening. But please know that, as Lauren says, yes, we've had instances where it had nothing to do with that local bill, but somebody was able to get a senator from outside of the area who doesn't have any representation there and do that. And then also what she said, and then I'll turn it over to Latoya, is we had a local bill at one time where we had a staff member in the committee staff in Tallahassee that did not like this local bill. And he did not like this local bill for 6 years.
Right. Ours was 7.
And no matter what, everybody still wanted to try and do it, but sometimes it's just that simple. You could put all that hard work, you could put months and hours and staff and everything, and you're not able to change it, as Yolanda said, regardless of how good your representation is, it does not matter. Sometimes a mindset can make or break an issue. And also not going back, please understand that those are all things. So you have to, early on with committee staff, to see if they're even on board too, before you start putting all your efforts with your community in there. So I'll turn it over to Latoya.
Yeah, I just want to kind of chime in on what everyone is saying, as far as even from the beginning where my colleagues mentioned about communication and honestly visiting. Communication is extremely, extremely important. I think members appreciate you more actually coming to visit them in their districts. Like Candace said, they will remember that you came and you talked to them. They'll probably remember the issue because it's not so chaotic at that moment. When you get into committee weeks and session, that's all I can say is it just really gets haywire, and sometimes you'll end up possibly meeting with their staff, which is not a bad thing. It's good for you to get a rapport with their staff as well. So I think that is very important, and I think it's very important for you. Please, please, please come to Tallahassee. Come, because they will remember, see what's going on, see what's in action. Even if you may not get an opportunity to meet with the member right then and there, those department head agencies, the world is ruled in Tallahassee. So go and visit and check it out and see. There's no other thing to say. It's just that important. Please come. One trip is good. You may want to make 2, but one trip is good. You'll be ready to go after the one trip, but just still go. Just still come.
I just want to emphasize one other point of communication, because these ladies won't say it. When your lobbyists call you, it's important that you call them back timely and quickly, because they're trying to communicate with you to get some information from you in order to be able to feed that information back. Sometimes you can miss your opportunity, and they're running just as fast, if not quicker, than everybody else is. So the point being that they're trying to reach out to you to get information to help you. You don't want to let that message sit for days. You want to get back to them as soon as you possibly can, whether it's you or you're just communicating through one of your staff members in order to be able to get them the information that they need. Try and communicate back to them as quickly as possible, because that's the only way they can help you.
I would second that. I would agree.
Figured you might.
Even if it's something as simple as an email, if it's a bill that may affect your city, I need to know what you think about it. If it is, if it's something dealing with appropriations, I need to know what you think about it today, not tomorrow or 3 days after. Many of us work 25/8. So email us back, and just let us know, or give us a call, because I know we respond and we move forward, and we know how to approach or speak to a member about a certain situation. So yes, I definitely second third.
If I may jump in, the clock is real in Tallahassee. If the deadline is 6 p.m. and 1 second is a late filing. And our office, if it's a local bill, is governed by that time as well. That's why we start early, because when the date comes that you need to have your bill filed in full form, when the gavel strikes on opening day, Your local bill has to be a part of that as well. So that's why some of our deadlines may be much earlier than the deadlines in Tallahassee, but the clock is real. As a former legislative aide in the House myself, the clock is real. So you have to adhere to that. And that came to mind when they mentioned if your lobbyist calls you, answer the phone or call them back, because again, the clock is real.
I want to mention about communication, because some of the local bills that we've had over the last 25 years, 25 years have been food fights between two cities, adjacent cities, cities down the street. And so, as much communication as we can get early and we can resolve those issues before we get to the delegation meeting. Otherwise, it's arm-to-arm combat and nobody wins. Sometimes, and I know we have elected officials in the room, it gets to be personal, but to the extent that we can come to the delegation meeting with some type of agreement is really good. I've seen agreements made at delegation meetings, and they don't always turn out that great if they're made on the spot. So that's why it's important to start early. That's why it's important to communicate. And because your legislator is put in a bad position if they have, both cities. And we have both cities, dragging out and all of that. And then I wanted to also respond to the fact that one senator can stop a delegation local bill. That is true, that is real. And there is only one other solution when that happens, and that is to have the entire Senate then to agree that they should overrule that senator that was overruled, and that is virtually impossible. I think in 25 years I've seen it one time with Tom Lee in Tampa. So communication is key. Try to work it out. Kiss and make up before you get to the delegation meeting. Otherwise, everybody's going to be miserable, and then we have to go to Tallahassee, and then we're on opposite sides and fighting. So.
And just to add to that too, I mean, the main goal, right, is to make our Broward delegation look good, right? We want to make their efforts as easy as possible, right? So, I mean, that's why you have representation, you work diligently with your governmental relations in-house, but honestly, the easier that you make it for the member, the more excited they're going to be about your project, okay? So it's really important to make sure that you dot all the I's, cross all the T's, do all that, because they are the name, they are the sponsor, and they're the ones that are having the conversations with the chairs of those committees and those relationships, in addition to your representation having those conversations. It's very different when a member-to-member conversation happens, much like elected officials to elected officials and staff to staff. And I want to touch base on when you said a lot of the time you'll meet with staff. Staff is more important sometimes, I will tell you. For sure. And I'm sitting up here with a lot of, staff that were staff first, but I mean, staff is the most important person in the room because they are the gate person and the gatekeeper to everything. And I will tell you that most of the time, they will be the most helpful thing because the member is running around like crazy and they're relying on their staff to make sure that they're where they need to be, those conversations are happening. So of course, meeting with the members directly is imperative, but don't forget to create those relationships now with the staff. So, and we appreciate that. You want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I have so we talked about the local bill process, and I wanted to comment a little bit on general bill process and also on appropriations as well, which is a lot of it echoing a lot of what Yolanda said. But for the general bill process, you also have to be as early as you can with that as well. It doesn't have to go through the same local delegation hoops that the local bill does, but for a general bill, you still have to get a House sponsor, and they're capped at 6 bills. They fill up pretty quickly with those slots. Oh, 7 of, right. Yeah, there's also been a lot of changes in the past few years, which I know a lot of staff here can attest to. And so you want to be able to lock down a sponsor quickly because their bill slots are going to be filling up and people are going to be asking and they're going to have stuff in drafting, and then other people are going to come and potentially take that spot. So you want to be able to make sure that they have buy-in and that they're ready to file the bill. the committee weeks are likely to start in December, as Yolanda was saying, and then they're going to go through January. Session this year starts in March. Some years it starts in January, but if it's after an election year, then it's going to start in March. So this year, like she was saying, December is usually the time when you want to start getting all of your ducks in a row and getting things to staffers and getting things to your delegation members. With appropriations, I also want to say you should include your delegation members in the development process for what you're deciding and what you're identifying, because it's great for them, again, to have buy-in instead of just showing up and giving them a project that they really it's just to bring back money, but it's not necessarily something that they believe in or want to carry or want to talk to, or they might not have a strong relationship with certain chairs, or they have a stronger relationship with other chairs. And obviously lobbyists help a lot with all of that. But it's great for your delegation members to also give input and say, yes, I want to sponsor something like that, or no, I don't really want to sponsor something like that, instead of bringing it to them and just saying, you have to sponsor this because you represent us. It's not typically a great plan, because at the end, when they have all these other priorities and the chairman's asking them to pick two, and they're asking how much money that they're able to allot them, then your project, they want to bring home money, they want to make you happy, but it's even better if they believe in that project and that they were bought in from the very beginning and that you included them from the very beginning. And with that, I also want to echo what Yolanda was saying about cost. So it seems intuitive, if you ask for a lot, you might not get that much, but you're going to end up where you want it to be, potentially through negotiations. But that's not actually how it works in the legislature. It hasn't worked that way for the past several years in the legislature. If you ask for too much, they will ignore you. And they actually prioritize a lot of times projects that are under a certain threshold. They also have a new rule in the Senate where if you don't get into the Senate budget initially, you can do an amendment. If you don't get into the House budget initially, you can't do an amendment. So if you're not in the initial budgets, the Senate's your only shot. And they're going to cap the amount of the project, how much you can get for what we call a foothold, and that puts you in play for conference. And if your project is a $10 million request, like she was saying, and you can't, it's impossible to get a $5 million foothold into the Senate budget. It's not impossible, but it's nearly impossible. Your project is not going to go anywhere, really, because then they have to take that money from somebody else's project. But they want to look for 50%, unless it's under $250,000. And usually there's a minimum for $250,000 as well to get it into that Senate budget. So that's a new rule to be aware of. Another new rule is that if you're not in the House or Senate initial budgets, that you're not going to be in play at all for conference. It used to be if you didn't make it in the initial budget, we could still work conference and slip it in. And there is still those possibilities. Things happen all the time in Tallahassee, and it's not like rules are super hard and fast, but just as a general rule of thumb, you're not going to be able to be in play for conference. So if you ask for something that you can have it funded at least at 50% in one of those initial budgets, that puts you in play, then you could get it up higher during the conference, and that keeps you alive throughout the whole session, as opposed to going in, asking for a lot of money up front. You're never even going to make it in the budget to begin with, and you're not going to be in play in conference. So those are really important things as well. I also want to echo on the timeline, getting it in as early as possible. Some more hoops in the House is that now you have to file it as a bill. That bill then has to get heard in a committee. Thank goodness they've now changed it this past year to where it's on consent, because that process was very laborious, but you still have a lot more hoops to get through on the House side. So not only do you get your forms in, and when she was saying that the deadline, the hard deadline is not going to be in December, but that's what the smart deadline is. If you're going to be in play, it's better to get it in early when everybody has more time to focus on your things and to listen to you about it, and then follow up later when everything is hectic. And that's the best strategy. And as opposed to sending it at the last minute when the actual deadline is. You should never really pay attention to when the actual deadline is. You should have it in way before, because when the actual deadline is, and I know Linda can attest to this, everyone sends in their projects, and the staffers are trying to get them all in. We don't really have time. If we get bombarded with all of your forms, we don't have time to give appropriate feedback. To be able to make changes and make it a stronger project at the end. We don't have time to get the member feedback, and that's a really important part as well. Going to my initial comments about that, and so it's just important to get it in as early as possible, and then that way you can get it through the committee process, so get it heard in its initial committee, and then again, it just means you're alive. It doesn't mean you can celebrate, or actually you don't even get to celebrate until the governor signs the veto message. But those are just some tips for making sure that you're setting yourself up in the right place to be able to stay in through the whole process.
I know that sounds like super complicated, but the bottom line is don't be late. Be early, and we have deadlines to meet, and that's why you need a lobbyist.
I had a question from the from my email. They mentioned with all these different deadlines, and we have November election coming. So is it too early, or do we wait till November to start looking for bill sponsors? Well, what's the best information or thought on that?
So I would start making sure you have your projects down first. You know, what do you want? What are you looking for? If it's cultural, for example, if it's a cultural project, if it's a bricks and mortar project, then more than likely that's not a good project to submit. But you can go through the grant process. There's a grant process for bricks and mortar, cultural facilities grants, and that kind of thing that are due later on that don't go into the process. Parks, projects that don't go through the process. But you can start now deciding what your priorities are. There's some members, because Broward is heavily Democratic, a lot of our races are basically over after the primary. So sure, if members are willing to have conversations, we have a new member that we're going to be bugging very soon. We want to talk about what those if you have them ready. Let me just say this. That we had a very unique situation this session where we could submit local projects after the process was all over. I think it was $175 million. That was an outlier. Don't expect that this session. But what happened there was a very good example. Sometimes we keep putting the same projects in over and over, and they get vetoed, and we just act like if we change the lipstick that perhaps they would change. We need to look at that. That was a good example this session. They didn't want to have projects that have been vetoed. They wanted them to have another name, or, we know how to change our hair and whatever, but you're gonna have to do that because it's clear that staff is looking at projects. We saw this last year, so we didn't fund it last year. We're not going to fund it this year. Or if the governor vetoed it, you might consider another project or changing it in some ways. And how can you do that? If you communicate with your lobbyists, we can go ahead and call the agency, call the contract manager or whoever is in charge of kind of giving a nod to the governor's office about what was wrong with the project. That's another reason why you want to start early.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it. Yes, having the conversations now I think is important, right? But don't expect to have an answer either, right? Because if they are still in an election, that's fine. But you can have the conversation and say, listen, we're thinking about doing this. Is this something that you like, or is this something that you don't like? And maybe I can follow back up with you, but at least talk to them early on.
Right.
But don't expect to have an answer right now because, and they probably won't have an answer until end of November or even the beginning of December on some things, right? Because they're also, they have relationships outside of the delegation. They have relationships outside of Broward County. So if they're going to be doing bills, they may have, an industry situation that they've been dealing with for many years too. So just know that those 7 slots, if we're doing a general bill, could be not just, even though it'll impact Broward or it'll impact an industry, it may be something that they've committed to somebody else whether it was a bill that they had the year before or those. So these are all considerations. So I think having early communication, I mean, honestly, it all comes down to communication. It comes down to like two things, relationships and communication, and that's it. I mean, we know the process really well, right? And so you're gonna rely heavily on this, your lobbyists and the people that you hire, or the League of Cities, and Mary Lou's an amazing resource, her and Sally, and I mean, completely 100% rely on those resources. At the end of the day, it comes down to information, communication, access, and what was the last one that I just said that I can't remember, if anybody's listening. But anyway, relationships. Yes, relationships. That's what it comes down to, right? And you have to make sure that you have those relationships. I mean, you obviously have representation that has relationships, but you want to make sure that you have that relationship too. Nothing's better or helps us out more when your city manager or your mayor or whoever calls that member directly and has that communication. And I mean, it really does make a difference. And I would say come up twice, because I want everybody to come for Broward Days. But I also believe in what we recommend for our cities, and many of you are here, that if you do have one or two priorities, come up out during committee week. Yes. Because my echo over here. Because it's not as fast and furious. It's early on. You've met that communication. I know that, I'm looking at people that they've taken this recommendation, and it is helpful. And it's easier for us to get meetings for you guys. Yes. I mean, I'm looking at Zoraida. I mean, the fact is, they're busy. They're pulled in a million different directions. Staff is pulled in a million different directions. And a lot of the times, if everybody's trying to get that same meeting and that same communication, they don't have, they're in between committees, they're in between the constituents, and they're in between also member-to-member meetings. And also, remember, they have to also study the bills and know what they're dealing with in committee. So these are all time constraints. And so you want to make it as easy as possible. So I say come up early, and for Broward Days, but come up early and really just keep that communication. And it doesn't always have to be, and also, and please, I'm going to stop talking, but, don't only communicate to the members and staff when you need something. Yeah. It's so important, like I said, to that relationship. I mean, find a common ground. Just introduce yourself. Go to the office. Just say, hey, I'm just here to say hi. Can I be a resource to you? Is there anything that our city or our organization can provide? I mean, Kathy over there at Broward Health, I mean, she literally she's a fantastic resource for so many things in this community, and partners with so many cities and other organizations. Those things are things that we all have at our fingertips. We just need to work together and kind of utilize those relationships and those resources.
I would add to that, as far as the communication goes, it's more or less to a level of consideration for you all as well. We understand that you all are running cities, your mayors, your city managers, everything. You have your own business that you have going on. And two, you have members, I'm sure many of them, they fly up Monday morning, they're flying back Thursday evening. Like, it's fast paced all the time. So when it comes to time, and same for lobbyists, when it comes to the time, we cannot emphasize that enough. Like, I'm on a plane. I need you to get this in right now. It's that important. I also think, too, when it comes to just touching base again on the appropriations process, I would say, have your priority conversation, 2 to 3 projects. I would say 3, but know what that number 1 is. Because to Candace's point, when it comes down to it and they ask, what is that top priority? Boom, we already know what it is, no questions asked, and I have my little talking points and everything. That is what the member needs, because that is how they're going to do their communications, which again goes back to communication is key. That is very, very important.
And just adding what I was saying when Julie said, I mean, factual, right? So anything that you put on a sheet needs to be factual. It can't be an opinion. It can't be something that you think makes sense. It needs to be, because they're checking it. And it's called credibility, right? And you only have one shot at that. especially in Tallahassee, because you could have staff members that are there for years and years and years, and they will never forget the, person or organization that didn't give them, I was gonna say, didn't give them factual information.
Right.
So that's really important, right? And it's also the people that you have representing you too, their reputation. So, I mean, we want to make sure that the relationships, again, are preserved and that it's able to have that back and forth communication.
Let me just say the last thing about communication, I'll turn it over, is that you're going to get, the city's going to get a number of communications from the League of Cities, Florida League, Broward League. It's important, and you're going to see bills, and you're like, oh my God, we're getting ready to die right now. Communicate to us, your lobbyists, whatever, what those bills are, and let us kind of digest it before you maybe call your member directly and put their hair on fire. We want to make sure, where it is in the process. If the bill has only been filed and it's not going anywhere, we'd like to be able to tell you that before you go and, have a full court press on a member. We hate your bill, but you don't really know whether or not it's going anywhere. So it's communications on both sides. How you respond to the League of Cities is really important. We've had situations where we had cities that were directly involved with bills that they like or they don't like. We've been able to get some special conversations with the league on positions that hurt our particular cities. We like to do that. Once again, communication. So when you get those newsletters, we know that you read them, because invariably I get a call and say, oh my God, did you see this bill? We have and we hate this bill and it needs to die right now. Well, we have a chance to amend bills. We have a chance to do things that are to our advantage. A good example was the bed thing, the
SB 280 and SB 620.
yeah. It's like, oh my God, we have all of these people that want to do Airbnbs in our city, and it's going to just kill the whole city right now. And so, but it was helpful to have some testimonies from cities as to how they were handling things. Another thing was the valuations for ordinances last year. That one was another one. Oh my God, everybody's hair was on fire, and we were able to work it out. But how we were able to work it out is to get communications from the municipalities. Because the one thing I do want to say, every member, and it's across the board, listens to lobbyists, absolutely, but they listen to the constituents more.
For sure.
So that's why it's important that you communicate. They listen to the people that are in the district, and you are that person.
And then I'll send it over to you. But we're talking mainly because, right, we have cities in the room. But please know that the Florida Association of Counties and the Florida League of Cities work seamlessly together up in Tallahassee.
Yes,
It's
they
been
do.
many years where they have not. So it's really, so I want to mention, Broward County works, very good with everybody up there. And they have the same processes that you do. And we're fortunate to be able to work with them as well. But my point being is, you have a large group of advocates when you are able to put the network together. So it's not just a silo where it used to be years ago when Yolanda and I first started, doing this. But like now it's like a completely different organization up there, and it's really seamless and it's really great. So I
And we
just
meet,
want
and we
everybody to know
meet
that.
weekly, by the way.
Fair.
The fair, which is the cities and the counties meet together weekly over very good lunch on Wednesdays. But we get a lot done.
One last
Go ahead.
comment when it comes to funding. This just came to mind. Do some research with the different state agencies. Like I know many down in South Florida, coastal and flooding and everything is such a big issue. And I know many of us, we get tons of appropriations requests for water projects. But if you check and see what's on the Department of Environmental Protection, they may have something for you which will allow you to put your focus on something else that your city may need. That will help you gear your priorities up So DEP, or what's our other one? Department of Economic Opportunity, possibly Enterprise Florida. Like, take a look at these state agencies, Department of Children and Families and Juvenile Justice. They have funding out there. I know that's really big for, you know, cities. It kind of helps with your communities and what you're trying to do. Look and see. And then that way you can put your focus on other things that we can assist you with.
Fantastic. What a great panel. Thank you. Thank you very much. We do have some time for some questions, and I just want to also say that what I heard from everybody on this panel, and what I think you've heard also from the council delegation, is that help us help you, right? Is that work with us, communicate with us, both from the delegation side as well as your lobbyists, and that's the only way that we can get things done, is that if there's really good communication. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, you can stand up, come up front, announce yourself, ask it. No pressure if you don't, and we can move right into announcements if there are any questions.
No questions?
I mean, this panel was fantastic. I get it. You don't have any questions. Okay. Then I think we'll turn it over to our executive director, Ms. Knowles.
Okay. I will have each of the ladies to just give like a brief, like I guess their top one thing that they wanted you to take away from today, or top two. But I just want to state that our delegation will meet in November. And if you look in those packets that you have, those dates have past dates. It's because I'm waiting to get my new dates from my new delegation that won't be fully seated until November. But when session begins in March, we generally hold our meetings in December and January. We have like our org meeting to do welcome and have just like a small celebration to welcome the new delegation and the returning members. But then in December, we will likely hold, our first public hearing. And that's also the time when any local bills will have their first reading. And then we'll do our second meeting in January, likely early, and we'll have second reading or final reading of local bills, and then a vote on the local bill. We do that so we can have time for our publication deadline that is required by the House, that delegations do, to get information in timely. So when March 5th or March 7th comes, first day of session, we can be ready to rock and roll. So I want to make sure that I just kind of put that out. So be watching. I encourage you. Please, our website is broward.org/legislative. That's the delegation's website if you need information. And I'd also encourage you with some of the things that you heard, some of the glossary of terms or terminologies, our Florida House, myfloridahouse.gov, they have a full glossary of all of this. What does conference mean? What does laying on the table mean? It does not mean getting up and laying on the table. Don't do that. But just a glossary of terms for things that you may hear and may not understand what they are right now. And Candace has mentioned Broward Days. Broward Days is March 21st and 22nd. Your delegation office is the director for Broward Days. So if you have questions, we'll get that too, and we'll have information going out to everyone. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Starkey. I can, yes, and I can do you even better. It's on our website right now, just in case Sydney and I get back and we forget today. But we can email it out. But on our website, broward.org/legislative, it's present there now. The slide. They're gonna call you all later. That's what it is.
Call us later.
So let's start. We'll go Candace. Well, LJ, Candace, Julie. Yolanda and Toya, and then we can wrap it up. This is just like one takeaway, and it may be the same thing, just the kind of press, but just a quick takeaway for everyone.
Sure, just be polite when you're in Tallahassee and listen to your consultants and what they're advising, and also to your delegation members and what they're advising when you're crafting what you're going to be bringing to Tallahassee.
That's true.
And I would say building relationships now isn't a perfect time. I mean, it really is. You have, you've got the time, and you've got pretty much almost a brand new delegation, you know, and so use this opportunity now to really focus in on that and educate them and at least get them familiar with who you are, what you represent, and what's important.
And building on Candace's education component, remember, slightly persistent communication with sound bites, short, succinct information about what your interests are.
And I would say that we have a great delegation. We have some leadership in our delegation with Senator Book as the minority leader in the Senate, which bodes very well for us. We have some new members, and they're going to need our help, but we're really excited for them. The Broward delegation has always done a really good job of working together, and that's because of all of you. And so we want to continue that so that everybody's happy in spite of.
And I would just say communicate, listen, and smile.
I believe that is all. Our delegation office is in this building. It's actually the next door over. So if you're ever in the county and you see our light on, like Motel 6, knock first, because Sydney and I are very cautious about who we let in to the room. But we're here. I have cards also if you need my contact information. But if that is all, we are done. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Early Learning Coalition, don't go anywhere. I want to talk to you before you leave.